So this is a demo of the lateral flow outcome reporting system that AirLogic have built. So the approach taken here is based on self-enrollment. So staff members will be encouraged to visit a self-enrollment form, which is the one that you can see here. And once they're enrolled on the system, they will get regular reminders to submit their latest test result. So what you can see here is, of course, a demo permutation of this system. And all of the text that you see here, like the privacy notice, for example, is entirely customizable. And there's a few bits of details that we do need as a bare minimum to be captured, but there is some flexibility in the presentation and which fields are mandatory and things like that. So for example, if I was to register here, I need to provide things like date of birth, name, gender, these types of things. Actually, in this permutation, gender is not mandatory, so I don't actually need to include that information. But of course, it does enrich the data set, the more data that we can capture about staff members, and it does mean that the dashboards can present more useful breakdowns of the information. Okay, so on to the next step, we need to provide a staff number, which might be the ESR assignment number. As you can see here, there's an example of the typical NHS payslip and where to find that, so that staff members can readily find that information about themselves. Again, in this particular example, the staff number is not mandatory, but that is entirely definable. So if I was to include my staff number and departments, so here you can see this is a kind of generic example of what this might look like. In reality, we would need the trust to provide a list of departments here so that we can present a kind of well-defined set of departments that the staff member selects from, rather than having them kind of type in a free text description of their department, where you would see some variance in how people describe that. And then we need to provide some contact preferences. So the system is based on reminders that go to either an email address or an SMS phone number. So if I was to enroll with email-based reminders, I provide my email address. And because I know that I've already enrolled here, I'll just add a slight variance here to the email address so that I can show the enrollment process. But I could opt into SMS-based reminders if that's more convenient for me. And it's worth noting as well that we don't enforce use of work emails here. We do anticipate that the staff members that probably access their personal emails more frequently. So to encourage uptake and to make this kind of low barrier to entry, we don't try to force people to use nhs.net email addresses or anything like that. Okay, so if I was to submit that, you can see here we do use things like reCAPTCHA. This is actually only because I've submitted this form recently, so I do need to find all the palm trees, which will challenge my cognitive abilities a little bit. And once I'm enrolled on the system, as I say, I'll receive reminders, and the schedule on which I receive those reminders is entirely defined by the trust. Of course, there is some national requirements around how frequently these tests are to be taken. So there is some defaults that can be applied, which is twice weekly submissions. And the way that the reminders work is that if you've already submitted within the last half a week, if you're going for twice weekly, then you wouldn't receive a reminder. Whereas if half a week has passed and you have not yet submitted a test result, then you would receive that reminder by whichever communication method you specified. So now that I've enrolled, I'd receive a welcome email that looks something like this. And again, all of this text is customizable, but there's a few important links here. So there's a link to go and submit a result, so my initial test result. I can also unsubscribe from the system, and if I was to follow that link, there is some advice there that really I should only be unsubscribing if I've left the trust or if there's some other direction that's been given to me specifically by the trust that I no longer need to provide lateral flow test results. And I can also follow a link to update my details. So for example, I might have misspelled something or I might have moved department or something like that. So most importantly, of course, it's all about submitting test results. So this is the form that we would then use to capture a test result. And much like the enrollment form, all of this text here is customizable. And again, there's some configurability in terms of which fields are captured and which fields are mandatory and things like that. What we do need to provide is a lot number of the test strip. And again, there's a picture here showing an example of a test kit and where you would find that number. To our understanding, this is a national requirement that lot number needs to be reported on to Public Health England. So in most permutations, this would be a mandatory field. Okay, we can include some comments. We have seen comments, some of them around kind of the system itself. Generally speaking, people saying it's easy enough to use, or maybe people had issues with the physical test kit itself, those types of things. But it is, of course, entirely up to the trust as to how they monitor this and what they do with that feedback. But the main bit, of course, is about submitting the outcome of the test. So we provide a date and time that the test was taken, and you can see that this defaults to the current time to make this kind of quick and easy to fill out. But if I am kind of retrospectively submitting, maybe I took the test at the start of the day and then I got distracted, I can change this to be reflective of the time that I actually took the test. And the test result, of course, we need to include. So if it's a positive result, you'll see we can include a bit of guidance about what to do in the event of a positive test result. Negative, of course, there's probably nothing to say. In theory, if there was something additional to say, we could include that underneath. And there is also some guidance as to what to do if you receive an inconclusive test result. Okay, so now that that's submitted, my kind of submission for this half of the week is done, and I won't receive any reminders until later in the week unless I get there first. So that's the kind of end user viewpoint, the staff member viewpoint of the system. But of course, on the other side of it is the operational usage of the data that is coming in and what the average trust would need to do with that information. So to give access to that data, we provide a dashboard through our back-end reporting system. And in actual fact, there's two dashboards that you would receive in a kind of typical setup of this system. And the kind of the bigger point to stress here is that this is a customizable dashboard. So whilst there is a kind of default instantiation that looks something like this, if there's additional metrics that the trust needs to report on or want to have visibility of, as long as it's within the data that we're capturing, we can also add that to the dashboard. But you can see this is an operational view. So this is de-identified, and we're seeing things like total registrations within the last 7 days. We're seeing a count of registrations today. We're seeing registrations over time, test outcome submissions over time, count of positive tests over the last year. So this is kind of all time, how many positive test results have we received. There's a split of test outcomes. There's a bit of a tag cloud of the types of comments that are coming through, test result submissions. We've also got an unusual submission count. So we do have some parameters on which we decide that a submission is unusual, and we can display that. As you can see here, there's no examples of that in this particular demo. So that is the operational dashboard. There is also, of course, a Pid Based Dashboard. So this is the underlying data that is used to report to Public Health England. So to our understanding, there's a national requirement that all organisations must report weekly to Public Health England. And this is the exact format of a CSV that you would need to do that submission. So to extract that as a CSV, I can click on the ellipsis over here and then click download CSV. And then that is downloaded, and I can simply take that CSV file and upload it directly to Public Health England, and it'll include all the data that I need, and it'll look something like this. So that is basically all of the core functionality of the system. As I mentioned, there is a few other bits and pieces like the ability to unsubscribe. Very simple, just follow the link in the email and acknowledge that you want to deregister. And also the ability to update details. Again, very simple. We follow the link and we select what we would like to update. So we can switch reminders to a different email address, for example, or we can change the department. And or we can change our staff number if we've mistyped that or been allocated a new staff number.